Good afternoon, or I guess depending on where you are in the world, good evening or good night or good morning. I don't know. You could be anywhere. If you want to pop into the comments and leave me a comment about where you are, I'm always curious. It's always fun to see where everybody is joining from, but welcome. My name is Natalie MacLees, and every other Wednesday afternoon, my time in Los Angeles, I do a 1 hour live stream on some kind of accessibility topic. And I'm very excited about today's. So I'm glad that you're here. And we're going to talk about automatic accessibility scanners and what kinds of things they get right, what kind of things they miss, and what kind of extra work they might make for us as accessibility professionals or as developers. Now, I want to be clear that I'm not anti-scanner, right? I am founder of Aardvark, which is an accessibility testing tool that includes an automated scanner. And for that very reason, that scanners are very useful and very helpful and save a good amount of time when you're testing a page for accessibility. However, they can't catch every type of accessibility issue. And you'll see exactly what I mean a little bit later in the stream today. So we've got a web page we're going to use for testing this fog lifter coffee company. And you'll see that the scanners are missing quite a few issues that actually make this website difficult or impossible for some users to actually be able to operate this website and get all of the information that's here. And that is despite the fact that the site looks pretty good in a scanner. So a lot of times I talk to people and I say, well, listen, like you can't just run a scanner and fix the issues that the scanner found and then say you're done. And people say, well, what do you mean? They've never heard that before. They thought that was it. And then they say, well, what kinds of issues are we talking about it missing? And then I have to kind of on the spot think of, oh, here's some things it could miss. But now I'm going to have this video to point to and say, here's exactly the kinds of issues that it misses and how a scanner can be misleading. Your scanner results can be misleading and lead you astray. So at the end of the live stream today, by 2 p.m. my time, I'm in Los Angeles, you will have a good idea of how accessibility testing actually helps, where it can be misleading, and some ideas for what you could test if you want to really make sure that a page is accessible and not just passing the scanner. So if you have a favorite scanner that you like to use, you could let me know in a comment. I am going to test Axe. I'm going to test Lighthouse. I'm going to test Wave. And then we're going to test the 3 different scanning engines that are built into Aardvark as well, which is Axe, but then also HTML code sniffer and also the IBM equal access accessibility checker. So those are the ones we're going to look at today. If you have another one that you want me to try scanning this site with, I'm happy to do it if you just drop it in the chat. But thank you so much for being here. This is going to be a good stream. I think we're going to find some exciting and eye-opening information today. So let's talk about these scanners a little bit for a second. So a scanner is really good at flagging if an image is missing alt text. Really easy for a scanner to tell that. Easy to tell if a form field is missing a label. In some cases, and we can talk about this a little more, it can detect if you have low contrast text. So if you have, a light gray background with white text, it can detect that. Now, there are other cases where scanners can't detect low contrast text. And that's if you have different types of positioning, so relative positioning, absolute positioning, etc., or if you have background images, background gradients, those kinds of things. A lot of scanners can't tell if your text has enough contrast or not. And so it's something that scanners can flag sometimes in the cases where it's very straightforward. But once the case gets a little bit complex, most scanners can't deal with that. Scanners can easily flag if you are missing your language attribute. So every HTML document should have a language attribute that tells assistive technology what language the page is in. And that is because assistive technology like screen readers will load in different capabilities for different languages, right? So that when it's reading a page that's written in Spanish or French, that it's actually using the correct pronunciation libraries for those languages and is correctly reading out the text. Whereas if I have a page that's all in French, but I code the page and say it's an English page, well, then what's going to happen is a screen reader is going to try to apply the English pronunciation library to the French, and it's going to sound terrible. And it may not even be comprehensible to the person who's trying to listen to it. So scanners can detect that when we're missing our language attribute or when we have an incorrect language attribute, because there is a finite set of options that you have. There's only so many languages in the world. If you have duplicate IDs or buttons or links without any text in them, those are the kinds of things that scanners can really, that pretty much any scanner is going to be able to find those issues. Now, where does a scanner fall down? A scanner can check that certain text is present, but can't check if it's correct or usable. So we talked about in the case of language attributes, it can check in that case if that's correct because we have a finite list of things that we can choose from, right? There's only so many languages in the world that we can write a web page in. But when we're talking about alt text for an image, there's not a finite list. There's not a single correct answer even. And a scanner is not going to be able to evaluate the alt text that we've written and ensure that it's correct, not just for the actual image that's there, but also for the context in which the image is used. So both of those things matter for what we're going to write for alt text, and a scanner just can't check those kinds of things. Okay, so I see Suzette in the chat saying she likes Wave. So we're going to test this site with Wave a little bit later today. And Tarek had a question about the language attribute being the lang, L-A-N-G attribute. Yes, that is exactly what I'm talking about. A lang attribute is required on all HTML elements on the web. And if you have, for example, a page that's all in English, but you have a little section of it that's in French, then you would have a lang attribute on just that section to say this section is French, so that assistive technology is aware that there's a portion of the page that's in another language. And then other times, scanners can only detect if the right ARIA attributes are there, but they can't actually test the experience of using the page. So the scanner isn't going to actually tab through the page. A scanner is not actually going to fire up a screen reader and make sure that what the screen reader says makes sense. So there's some definite gaps that a scanner just can't cover. So you'll often hear a lot of accessibility professionals say that it's roughly between a quarter and a third of the issues on your page that a scanner can't find. And let me explain that number a little bit and why it's so hard to pin down and why we can't say it's exactly this percent of issues that it can't find. So when I say it can only find maybe about a third of issues on your page, what I mean is there are 78 total for WCAG success criteria. There's, or I think now with 2.2, there's 87 actually. So there's 87 success criteria, right? So roughly, let's say I have 87 different things that could fail on my website if I'm going for AAA compliance. And when I say a scanner can only find a third of the issues, I mean a scanner can only check about 30 of those success criteria. The other 60, it can't even check. So it's not strictly 30% of the total number of issues on my page, but it's 30% of the types of issues that might be on the page, if that makes sense. So that's what we're talking about and why it's hard to nail down a number. And we'll also see that we don't get the same results from all the different scanners that we use today. So some of them have strengths and weaknesses in different areas. So that's something else to be aware of. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in and start testing this page. Let me do a quick demo of the page. It's a pretty simple page. It's got a little bit of functionality on it that I'll just show you really quickly with just using my mouse. So we have Fog Lifter Coffee Company, and we have a cart up here at the top. And if I click on it, I can see that my cart is empty. I can filter the types of coffee by the roast. So if I like light roast, medium roast, or dark roast, I can filter the coffees that way, or I can go back to seeing all of the coffees. I can sort the coffees. So if I want the cheapest coffee first, I can do that. I could do the most expensive coffee first, or I can say the featured coffees, or I can just alphabetize the coffees. So I've got those options available. I can add one of the coffees to my cart. So if I click the add to cart button, you can see that my cart now says 1. And if I click it, I can see that I've got 1 of that item in my cart, and I can see the subtotal and a button to go check out. And I can also remove that item from my cart. So I've got a little remove button, and now my cart is empty again. So if I click the cart again, I can see it says your cart is empty. And one more little piece of functionality, if I click on one of the coffee pictures, I get a modal that shows me a zoomed in picture of the coffee. So that's our page. It's a relatively simple page, but a really common e-commerce type of page. Pretty basic functionality that we would expect to see. So let's try giving this a scan. And the first one that I'm going to try is Axe, which you can use typically as a browser add-on. And this is available. This is created by DQ, and it is available for free. And then there is also a paid version available. So what I'm using today is the free version. And so you can see that I've got it installed in my browser. So if I look over here, Axe DevTools Web Accessibility browser extension, and I can run a full page scan. And you can see there's a little ad there for the pro version. So let me go ahead and scan the full page. And it flickered there for a minute and went back and scanned my page. And it came back and tells me you have 0 automatic issues. Nice. Okay, so it didn't find any problems on my page, the scanner. Let's go ahead and give Lighthouse a try. So Lighthouse is built into Chrome, which is the browser I'm using today. And I'm going to leave it at navigation mode, which is just going to scan the current page. I'm going to set it to desktop. And then I'm going to leave only accessibility checked for the tests that I'm running, because I don't care about all these performance tests and all of that. Like, I'm just interested in accessibility today. So I'm just going to run the accessibility test. So let me go ahead and click to run that. And Lighthouse will take a few minutes to run the page. And now it comes back with my report, and it gives me a perfect score, 100. So I couldn't score any higher, according to Lighthouse. So I've passed all of the tests. It did find 34 that weren't applicable to my page, but it ran 26 tests, and I passed all of them. And you can see it was testing a bunch of ARIA attributes. It was making sure buttons had accessible names, et cetera, et cetera. And it passed all of those tests. So perfect score from Lighthouse. I'm going to save Wave and Aardvark for later. So let's just think about these two tests that we just ran. So Axe and Lighthouse, I think, are probably two of the most common scanners that are used on the web. And they both basically gave us back a perfect score. So we might think, my page is in pretty good shape. I probably don't have any work to do here. I have bad news for you, if that's what you're thinking. And we're going to dig into it, and we're going to take a look at where this page falls down. And we're going to take a look at the other couple of scanners. So the IBM scanner, Wave, and HTML code sniffer, and we'll see what they find, what they were able to find after we kind of test this page a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and close my browser console. And I am going to just refresh this page so I have everything reset. And I'm going to try using, I'm not going to use my mouse. Okay, I'm going to set my mouse aside, and I'm just going to try to operate this site with just the keyboard. Okay, so I have a skip to content link. Let's go ahead and hit enter on it, and let's see if that worked. So I hit tab again, and yeah, I skipped past all that header, and I'm in the main area of the page. So everything looks good. Let me go back. Yep, everything, right? I can highlight all of these links. Now, none of those links actually work, right? I didn't demo those. Let's go ahead and let's look at our cart. Okay, we can open up the cart. We can take a look at it. Everything's looking pretty good so far. Let's see if I can filter the coffees. Oh, so there we go. There's the light roast, the medium roast, the dark roast coffees, and then it can go back and say all the coffees. So we're looking good so far. All right, let's try sorting the coffees. So let's see. Oh, doesn't seem like I can sort the coffees. So I don't have any, the arrow keys don't work. They're just scrolling the page. And tabbing just takes me out of the menu. And I hit the escape key and it doesn't close that featured or that sorting menu. Huh. I seem to be kind of stuck. So I can't sort the coffees. So there's a broken item. So let's see if I can press the sort button there again. Oh, at least I can close the menu that way, because I couldn't sort the coffees otherwise. Okay, now we hit tab, and I noticed an interesting thing. We skipped the first coffee, right? And we went to the second coffee, which not expected, right? I would have expected to go from the sort button to that first dark roast coffee, but instead I went to the second coffee. So let's see what happens if I hit tab again. Oh, I'm in the middle of the bottom row of coffees. So I skipped over 2 coffees and suddenly I'm at this coffee. And I hit tab again and I'm back at the first coffee. And tab again and now I'm at the last coffee. And tab again and I'm at the third coffee. And tab again and I'm at the fourth coffee. Okay, so we have a tab order issue. So that's another accessibility problem. If we had more than 6 coffees on the page and somebody was trying to tab through those, that would get really confusing. I mean, it's pretty confusing even with just 6 of them on the page. It's pretty confusing to try to figure out what's going on. All right, well, let's try testing out putting one of these coffees in the cart. It doesn't seem like I can actually get the focus on the cart button for any of these coffees. Oh, so I can't actually shop on this website because I can't actually put any coffees in the cart. So, that's a real problem. I can't actually buy any coffee. And I can't zoom in on any of the coffees, right? Like where I could click on the coffee with my mouse and see the modal with the bigger image. I can't do that either. So we have a good amount of the functionality of the site is not available, including the critical functionality of actually being able to purchase the coffee, which is the whole reason that the site exists, right? So I can't even do that. I can't even put a coffee in my cart. I can't purchase anything. And remember, this is just the one screen. Who knows what we would run into if we actually got the coffee in the cart? Would we be able to actually check out? So this site's not looking so good. right now. So we're having a problem. And we did see there were 0 problems according to Axe and Lighthouse. But you can see that keyboard functionality is critically broken because I can't actually use the website. All right, so let's go ahead and test it with a screen reader. Let's see what how that works. So let me make sure it's loud enough.
VoiceOver on Chrome. Shop Coffee Vertical Line Fog Lifter Coffee Roasters Google Chrome. Natalie, aardvarkaccessibility.com. Window. Shop Coffee Vertical Line.
All right, so what I always say every time, if you're going to learn how to use a screen reader, the first thing you have to learn is how to make it stop talking. I'm using VoiceOver. I am using VoiceOver with Chrome, which is not super ideal, but it'll work. It's okay. The control key, the bottom left of the keyboard, is what is going to stop VoiceOver from talking. So, and then also, if you are a regular screen reader user, yes, my screen reader is very slow. It is at the default speed, and that may be a little bit difficult to listen to. But
heading level 1.
If you're not used to listening to the screen reader, then that speed is just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and just get my cursor, my VoiceOver cursor moved into the page here. So give me a second.
Wave aardvar a tool bookmark shop coffee vertical line fog lift in shop coffee vertical line.
All right, so now we're inside the web content, and I see we're on the skip to content link. So let's go ahead and activate that and see what happens.
Banner, link, image, fog lifter coffee, banner, link, image, fog lifter.
Okay, so it didn't seem to actually skip me anywhere. So that's something we want to pay attention to. Let's see if we can head over to that cart icon and see what happens when we try to interact with that.
Prime link, end of search, sub, end of card, menu pop-up collapsed, button. You are currently on a button.
Okay, so it did announce that it was collapsed, so that's good. So let's go ahead and see what happens when we activate that button.
Card, menu pop-up expanded, button.
It did announce that it was expanded, so that's good. And let's see if I can move into that pop-up and read what's going on in the cart.
Your card is empty. You are currently on a selectable text.
Yeah, so that looks pretty good. All right, let's go ahead and close the cart again. Whoops.
Your card, menu pop-up collapsed, button.
Okay, so cart looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and see if I can sort the coffees by the roast.
End of main. Heading left small filter by roast. Group. You are currently in a group.
Okay, that's good. It correctly announced that I had a group of choices there, right? I've got 4 options basically for filtering the coffees. So let's go ahead and give those a try and make sure they work.
All selected. Light toggle button. All selected. Toggle button. You are currently.
Okay, it told me I was on all and it told me it was selected, so that's a good sign. Let's try the other ones.
Light toggle button. You selected light toggle button.
Okay, so it let me know that the button was toggled, but it didn't really tell me the content on the page had changed, which might be okay. I could probably figure that out, right? Like as I start looking at the page, I'm going to notice that I'm only seeing light roasts. So let's try the other couple.
Medium toggle button. Selected medium toggle button. Dark toggle button. Selected dark toggle button. You are currently on a toggle button.
Okay, so those seem to be working reasonably well. Let me go ahead and put all the coffees back.
All toggle button. Selected all toggle button.
All right, let's see if we can sort the coffees.
Light dark end of sort. Featured menu pop-up collapsed button. You are currently on a button.
So that sounds correct. It's telling me that it's a menu and it's collapsed. So that's a good sign. Let's see what happens if I open it up.
Sort. Featured menu pop-up expanded button.
I don't hear anything about my menu options.
Featured. You are currently on a selectable text. Sort.
Okay.
Featured. Menu pop-up collapsed. Button. End of. Filled. Sort. Featured. Menu pop-up collapsed. Button. Sort. Featured. Feature. Price. Low to high. Sort. Featured. Menu pop-up
I can't actually change the filters, so I can read what my options are, but they're not read out to me as though they're menu options. So I suspect they're just there as plain text. I can't actually trigger anything, and I can't actually change the sort of the coffees. All right, let's go ahead and continue on through the page. Let's see if I can open up that modal and get a larger version of the coffee image.
showing end of products. Read article. Coffee. Clickable image.
Oh,
You are currently on an image.
it did tell me my image was clickable. Let's try clicking it. Okay, well, if you can see the screen, you can see that it did open the modal dialog, but it didn't tell me that it opened the modal dialog. And it also didn't move focus into the modal dialog. And if I try navigating around the page now.
Heading level 2, level 1, light roast, $18 and add Ethiopia, end of article. Coffee, heading medium 16, add column, end of article. Coffee, heading level 2, level.
So it's letting me just navigate around behind the modal, but I can't actually close the modal. I try to hit the escape key. It doesn't go anywhere. Let's see if we can get to the close button here in the rotor.
Landmarks menu. Window spots, links menu, headings menu, form controls menu. On item at.
All right, I see there at the bottom of the form controls, I have an option that says close button. Let's go ahead and go
add email at close button. You are currently on a shop coffee vertical line fog lifter.
Well, I was able to close the modal, but you can see that focus just moved back to the very top of the browser window. So I completely lost my place on the page. So that didn't really work very well. Let's go ahead and try to add a coffee to the cart. So give me a second because I got to navigate back into the web content here.
Shop coffee vertical, no items in. For shop coffee vertical line, shop coffee vertical bookmarks, toolbar, shop coffee vertical line fog lifter coffee voiceover off.
All right, hold on. Let me try this again.
Voiceover on Chrome. Toolbook shop coffee vertical line fog lifter coffee roasters. Web content. You are currently on a web content. Inside in shop coffee vertical line fog lifter.
Okay. Here we are. Now let's see if we can get
form controls menu. On a.
All right. So in form controls, I don't see any add to cart buttons listed there, but maybe they're links. So let's try to look at the links menu. Oh, here, no, there is add to cart buttons. I see.
Add Ethiopia Yurgachev to cart button.
Okay, so let's go ahead and go to that button.
Add Ethiopia Yurgachev to cart button. You are currently on a button. To click this button.
Oh, well, I did just click that button and I saw the cart because I can see the page. I can see the cart now says 1 on it, but it didn't tell me that I actually put that in my cart, right? It didn't actually tell me anything. Let's try putting another coffee in the cart. Let's see. Let's go to another add to cart button.
Form controls menu. Add Brazil Cerrado to cart. Add Brazil Cerrado to cart button.
Okay, so I'm on the add to cart button for the Brazil Cerrado, and I'm going to click that button. I heard the little button click sound, and I can visually see that the cart now says it has 2 items in it, but I didn't get any kind of announcement to the screen reader. So it's pretty difficult. It's not impossible to use this website as a screen reader user, but it's not that easy either, because now I have to know, gosh, what's going on? Let me open up the rotor again and try to go back to that add to cart button.
Form controls menu. On item email address. Add start meet card. Menu pop-up collapsed. Card. Menu pop-up collapsed. Button. You are current.
Okay, so I can hear that I'm on the cart button now.
Card. Menu pop-up expanded. Button. Your card. You are currently on a selectable list 2 items. You are currently in a list. Ethiopia Yurgachev times $1 18.00. 1 of 2. You are currently.
Okay, so if I get up there, I can figure out that I've got some items in my cart, but I have to know to go back up there. So it's not the friendliest site to try to navigate with a screen reader. Let's see what happens if I try to subscribe to the email list down there in the footer and I forget to enter my email address. So let's take a look at what happens. And again, I'm hitting escape to try to close the cart menu and it's not closing. So we've got a problem there, but let me try clicking the cart again. Nope.
List your card. Menu pop card. Menu pop.
There we go. All right. I could do it that time. Okay. Let me see if I can get to that email address field.
Form controls menu. On let me dots. Email address. Email.
All right. So let me head down there.
Email address. Email. 1 password menu is available.
All right.
Subscribe button. You are currently.
I forgot to disable 1 password, so I'll do that in just a second. But let's go ahead and just try to submit this form. So similar to adding to cart, like I heard the button click, the little noise happen. And visually, I can see that now the email address field is outlined in red to tell me that there's a problem visually, but we heard nothing. We heard no kind of feedback at all for the screen reader. So a very challenging page for a screen reader user to try to use. And then let's do one quick last check, which is none of those scanners flagged any issues with our alt text and our images. But let's go take a look at what that alt text is.
Form controls menu, landmarks menu, 13 items, window spots menu, landmarks menu, band props, products, article. You are currently in a coffee, clickable image. You are currently on an image.
Did you hear what that alt text was? Coffee. Coffee. Just coffee. Let's try a different image.
Heading 8 at the end of article. Coffee. Clickable image. You are currently on an
coffee. So spoiler alert, all 6 of them just have alt text of coffee. And this is where, right, a scanner can detect if the alt text is there, but it can't detect if it's actually helpful. Can't detect if it's actually correct. So that's going to be a problem. So let me turn the screen reader off.
Voiceover off.
All right, so we found some pretty significant accessibility barriers on this website, despite the fact that it passed the automated checks with Axe and with Lighthouse. So I did think that the results that I got in Aardvark and in Wave were interesting. So let's go and take a look at those now that we have a better idea of what the actual accessibility issues on the page are. So I'm going to go ahead and scan this page with Wave, which you just use on the web. It's also available as a browser extension, but you can just use it on the web at wave.webaim.org. And if you haven't used it before, it can be a little bit confusing because it tags a lot of things that are just informational. So alerts we're going to take a look at. Features are just informational. Structural is informational. ARIA is just informational. So I'm going to turn those things off so that we just get these alerts. Now, I don't have any actual errors, right? Those would show up as a red, I forget exactly what the icon looks like, but it's a red icon and it would show up as an actual error. I don't have any of those. So it didn't find any errors on the page. But I thought it was interesting that Wave did flag that we have 6 images with the same alt text. So, and it flagged 5 instances of it. So I guess it was okay with the first one having it, but then the other 5, it's like, wait a minute, there's something suspicious going on here. So that was interesting that Wave was actually did at least alert you that maybe there's something you need to take a look at there. There's something fishy going on. Where you saw Axe and Lighthouse didn't care about the alt text matching on multiple images. All right, let's take a look at Aardvark because I think this also gets interesting. So I mentioned we have 3 options for your accessibility scanner in Aardvark. So you can use HTML code sniffer, and these are all open source libraries. Axe, which is the same one that we ran in the browser, presumably, but you can see here it found an issue, which is interesting. And then the IBM Equal Access Accessibility Checker actually found 10 issues. So let's take a look at, let's start with Code Sniffer. Oh, whoops, I got signed out. Hold on, let me sign back in. Oh, well, good thing I didn't disable 1Password. Okay. All right, Fog Lifter Coffee. So here's our results from running the HTML code sniffer scanner. And it says that I found 2 active issues. Let's go take a look at what those are. I can see that they are warnings. So similar to the Wave scanner, it didn't actually throw any errors, but it did try to draw my attention to a couple of things that it thought were a concern. So one is that I have some absolutely positioned text, which I think would be the skip to content link. Oh no, it's actually the label for the search is actually hidden, right? So I have a placeholder text, but there is a label programmatically. There's a label for this form field, but it is visually hidden. And so it said that label is absolutely positioned as part of being hidden. And so it said, oh, I'm not sure about the color contrast on this element because I can't check it because it's hidden. And then we got a similar thing on the badge on the cart count. So because that little badge was absolutely positioned, it wasn't able to tell if there was sufficient color contrast. So you can see that these are both flagged as needing manual review, and they're on the needs manual review tab, and we can look at each one of them and determine, like, is that an issue or not? And if it's not, we can just dismiss it, and then we don't need to look at it anymore. So let's look at the other issues. That's issue number 1. And issue number 2 that it found is also a warning, which would require manual review. And we have fixed positioning. And I think this must be our skip to content link. No, this is actually our modal. Okay. I'm really bad at guessing what the issues are. Okay, so this is actually our modal dialog, and it just wants us to make sure, it wants us to double check, use the page, and make sure that that modal being fixed position on the page isn't causing two-dimensional scrolling. So that's something that we would have to go over on the page. We'd try that out and make sure, and we could either dismiss that, like say, no, the page works fine, that's not an issue, we don't need to pay attention to it, or we would confirm it and say, actually, there is a problem there that we should probably go take a look at and get fixed. So that's the HTML code sniffer runner. So slightly different results than we saw. And then I think this one is also interesting that we ran the same Axe engine as the browser plugin, but this time it actually flagged an issue. And the reason that that happened is actually because the Axe runner is configurable, and in the browser add-on, actually we can open it up and take a look at it right now. You can go into here and change some settings around and change some things about how it actually works. And you can see that some of those options are saved for the pro version only. And it's just a matter of the way that we're using Axe inside of Aardvark has a different configuration. So our configuration was able to find an issue that the browser, the way that I have that browser one currently set up, just didn't find. So you could definitely go in, adjust those settings in the browser one, and probably find the same issue. So it's flagging that the accessible name does not match the visible label. And this is on our add to cart buttons. And in order to make those buttons a little bit friendlier and more accessible, oh, this is actually the actual cart button. So it's flagging that it has an ARIA label called cart, and then that text doesn't actually visually appear on the button. So that if I were using the page with a voice control, I wouldn't be able to say, go click the cart button, because I can't tell, I can't visually see that that's what that cart or that button is called. You know, it could be a basket, although I feel like There used to be a lot of clever things people used on e-commerce sites, but I feel like we've mostly settled on cart most of the time. So we would probably definitely want to take a look at that. Using ARIA label should be a last resort. There's probably a better way that we could give that button an accessible name. So something to keep in mind. That's more of a best practice than an actual failure, because there are ways to work around the fact that the visual name doesn't match the accessible name. Now, let's take a look at the IBM checker, because it actually flagged 10 issues that are on this page, and see what it's actually able to find. Let's go ahead and look at what those issues are. And we have one critical issue, which none of the other scanners were able to identify the problem, right, that we actually found in manual testing, that you can't operate these buttons with a keyboard. So the IBM accessibility checker was actually able to figure that out and flag it as a problem, right, and as a critical problem, which I agree that is a critical problem. Because if you're a keyboard only user, you can't put an item in the cart on an e-commerce site, which is the whole reason that the site exists. So definitely agree with that one. Let's take a look at the next one. A tabbable element should be visible on the screen when it has keyboard focus. I have a feeling this is going to be talking about, well, I'm not going to guess anymore. Okay, no, I was actually right that time. The skip link, right? So it can't tell, like, hey, if I focus that skip link, is it actually visible on the screen? Well, we saw that it was when we were over here using the page, right? So we can tell that when that link has focus, it's visible. So it's just flagging that, like, hey, this thing's supposed to be visible when it has focus. I can't tell if it actually is. You need to go take a look at it. So I've confirmed that's a problem. So this isn't a problem I need to take a look at. I can just go ahead and dismiss that. So let's go ahead and go back to our list of issues. And we have a keyboard focus indicator. So IBM Accessibility Checker does flag this on pretty much anything that can receive keyboard focus. It just wants to have you manually check and make sure. You can see that it's going to go through the page like one interactive item at a time, and just say, like, does that have a visible focus? So you can just tab through the site and kind of see. And now there is one missing. There is not a visible focus indicator on the search button itself. So that's an actual issue that we would need to confirm. But it looks like, at least in the top part of the page, everything else is good. So I would want to actually take this issue and confirm it. This actually needs to be fixed. There is a focus style missing. And on the rest of these, I could just go through and dismiss them because they're not actually problems. There is actually a visible focus indicator there. So this is just a case where the IBM checker is being a little more thorough, but it still can't tell things on its own sometimes. And so it's prompting you to go in and take a look and check. And you could, if you like that, then you can use the IBM runner. If you don't like it, you could choose the HTML code sniffer runner or the axe runner. So that's why we have the options available. Sorry. And then this one is saying that my input has to have a visible label. So none of the other checkers actually flagged this problem either. That form field, like I said, it does have a label, but it's visually hidden. And that passed the other checkers, but that does actually fail a success criteria. You have to have a visible form field or a form label. And so it did flag that one and let us know that that is a 2.5.3 failure. And we could go ahead and get that fixed. And let's see some of the other ones. So accessible name must match or contain the visible text. So that's the one that the axe runner inside Aardvark actually found as well. It is flagging that we've got some color and descriptive markup maybe that we need to take a look at. So that's going to need a manual review, I think. This, I think, also needs manual review. It's flagging that it thinks something on the page is a heading that's not actually marked up as a heading. So we just need to take a look at it. And it thinks the price, because it's bolded, it triggered it to say, ooh, are you trying to use that as a heading? And so we can say, like, no, that shouldn't be a heading. Everything is fine there. We don't have to take a look at it. Let's see what else. And it also flags some instructions, so those will need manual review. And then, of course, our warnings always need some kind of manual review, because that is the scanner outright saying, hey, I think there's a problem here, but I can't really tell on my own. I need you to go take a look and confirm whether or not there's an issue there. So I think overall the results are pretty interesting. How the different scanners found different things. Let me go ahead. I have some notes here that I wanted to make sure I shared. So we have 7 issues that were on the page purposefully that I knew a scanner wasn't likely to be able to pick up on. And so the first one is that the add to cart buttons they're not actual buttons, they're div tags, and they have a roll of button and they have an ARIA label, but they are missing the tab index, and they're also missing any kind of keyboard event listeners. So they're not listening for any kind of keyboard support. And you could see that with the keyboard only, I wasn't able to add anything to the cart. I was able to add things to the cart with a screen reader still, because my screen reader still saw those as buttons and enabled me to activate them. The featured drop-down menu is in there purposefully broken with looks right, has its little ARIA expanded and collapsed, right, and it looks right, but there's no support for actually navigating the options inside with either a screen reader or with a keyboard, so no way to actually get to those. The useless alt text on all of the images, right, that they all just say coffee. So that was planted in there, and only Wave flagged that as a warning. So that's an interesting finding. We have the form field in the footer that only shows a red border when it has an error. There's no announcement. There's no instructions for how to fix it. There's several different WCAG violations in that form, but none of the scanners actually flagged that as a problem. We do have the problem with the focus order, right? Jumped all over the screen. None of the scanners actually called that out as a problem. Now in Wave, we can actually go over to this focus order, and we can visually see what the focus order looks like. And you can see, like, it starts off pretty good, right? I go across the top, and then I go down to this row and start going across this row, and then it just goes wild. There's no predicting where that focus is going to land next, and then it goes back to being in a more predictable order. So none of them actually flag that, even though that's being done by putting tab index values of greater than 1 or greater than 0 rather on those items. None of the scanners actually flagged that as a potential issue. That actually surprised me, because that seems like a really easy one to at least throw a warning on, right? And say, hey, there's a tab index here that's maybe used in a weird way. And then adding items to the cart doesn't have any kind of dynamic update to let you know that the cart updated if you're using assistive technology. And then the search button. So it's funny because one of them actually flagged the cart button, but I had actually intended them to flag the search button, which has an accessible name that also doesn't match its text. But none of them actually flagged that one, which is kind of funny. And then our cart pop-up similarly it's similar to the featured sorting, or the featured, the sorting here. Similar to that, where like it has just enough ARIA to make it look correct. And even if you tried to use like an AI accessibility checker, it would probably say like, oh yeah, it's all using all the right ARIA attributes, everything is fine. But you saw that that's not actually operable. And the cart was kind of tricky to try to use also. And then, of course, our product image modal. The only thing that got flagged on this was that it uses fixed positioning, and we had to double check and make sure that that didn't cause horizontal scrolling. And it's completely broken, so it doesn't trap focus inside the modal. The escape key doesn't close it. and closing it also completely loses focus on the page. We completely lose our place. So there's many different things that are broken with this modal, but nothing flagged it, like nothing actually called that out. So that was another that was another interesting one as well. And then of course I could still get to the background and navigate around behind this modal, even though I shouldn't actually be able to do that. So our page does correctly have a lang attribute on the HTML element. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the markup here. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better in the video. So you can see that we have a lang attribute, and all of our images actually do have all attributes. There we are. But like we said, they're useless. They're not very helpful. They're not actually helping anybody out using the website. Our icon buttons, right? So here's our button here. It has an ARIA label of submit. So we made sure that our icon only buttons, there's another one, button, has an ARIA label. But like I said, ARIA label should be a last resort and not kind of our go-to solution for providing accessible names. The best solution is to avoid an icon only button. In the event that you can't do that, then you have some other options available. And I would say for these cases, for both these cases, I had an SVG nested in there, and I would just make sure that my SVG had a title element inside of it to make sure that the SVG itself had an accessible name, and then that's going to become the accessible name of the button. We have a working skip to main content link. We have sufficient color contrast throughout the design, even though one of the scanners did flag some of the like absolutely position things, saying it couldn't quite tell. And then these little filters for filtering out the rows, those are genuinely accessible. Those are all correctly marked up. So there was no issues there. Let's actually take a look at how those are marked up again. So we have a role of group with an ARIA label of filter by roast. Now, what would be preferable is if the filter by roast text was actually visible on the screen. And then we used an ARIA labeled by to refer to that text. That would be an improvement. And then you can see that these all have their ARIA pressed attributes so that it's easy to tell. And then, of course, pressing one of them unpresses the others. And we just use that ARIA pressed attribute to do the CSS styles. So everything with those actually works perfectly fine. So that was a little bit of a red herring to try to see if people might think there was a problem with those, but they're actually fine. They actually work exactly as intended. All right. So let's go back over here. Open preview. All right. So I've got just a couple of minutes left. All right. So if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. But I hope that this demonstrated to you how a page can pass a scanner but still have some pretty significant accessibility issues on it. So you definitely cannot just run a scan and think that your page is fine and that there's nothing else to do once the scanner is coming back and returning 0 issues. So things that we might want to think about, like which scanner is the best one? Overall, I'd say so we tested 5 different scanners, although we tested Axe in like 2 different contexts. They're more alike than they are different. There wasn't that big of a difference in what the different ones found. I think the standout one was the IBM accessibility checker, which, by the way, is also available as a browser add-on. So let me go down here, and I actually have it here. It is a really confusing UI, I have to say, in the browser extension. But it does find similar things. And again, like this is configurable, and we have it configured a certain way inside of Aardvark. and you can change your settings around in here. So here's it flagged 37 things as needing review over here and 7 actual violations. So you can untick them over here to adjust the list over here. It's a little bit of a confusing UI. But now we can see what the issues are. So we have content not in a landmark, which is a legitimate issue that actually is on the page accidentally, actually, that it did actually flag. That's legitimate. And I think that was an aardvark, but we stopped looking at the issues before we got to it. And it flagged a few places where the accessible name doesn't match the visible label text. So it flagged those actual issues. So this was probably the one that's the most thorough, but you did see that a lot of the things that it flagged were for manual review, right? So not actually saying it's an error, but saying, I think there might be a problem here. You know, you as a person, you need to go look at this and then let me know if this is something that I need to fix or not. All right, so passing a scan, it looks good. It looks really good when you can do this and scan a full page and get back this like, yay, you did it. But that is your starting line, not your finish line, right? So sure, get here first, but know that now you need to test with keyboard, you need to test with screen readers, you need to test with users who have disabilities actually trying to use your page to find the actual barriers that are still on your page that a scanner can't actually pick up. And I see Tark had a question on why accessibility runners can't trigger the select box to check if for the lack of arrow navigation. And they don't have generally scanners aren't actually running JavaScript. So it is possible to expand automated testing a little bit with a test suite like Cypress or Playwright. You can use something like that to code test for things like that to make sure that there is keyboard accessibility. You can test for visible focus indicators. So you can add you can make your automated testing more robust with test suites like that. And I know that there are open source libraries of like Playwright tests, for example, that are available in different people's repos on GitHub that you could bring into your project and run those against your own projects to help identify those kinds of things. But there's still not going to be 100% coverage, and they might still miss things that do cause legitimate barriers for humans who are trying to use the page. So a robot can never fully use a page the way a human does. And so humans still have to be in the loop for accessibility testing for at least the foreseeable future. Who knows? Maybe things will change. All right, so definitely always test your pages with keyboard because you can catch a lot of things that way, and fire up a screen reader. So if you're on a Mac or an iOS device, VoiceOver is included on that device for free. You can open it up and try it out. It is generally recommended that you use VoiceOver with Safari, but you saw I was able to use it with Chrome without too many issues. If you're on Windows, you have NVDA is available for free and works really well with Firefox, which is also free. And then if you're on an Android device, there is a screen reader called TalkBack that is included on the device that you could try learning how to use and test things out that way. All right, so we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you learned something. I hope I finally answered the question, why can't I just run a scanner and think that I'm done? I can't just fix all those issues the scanner found and think my page is accessible. I'm done. Good job, me. I did it. I hope I answered that question. And I'm going to have this video to use as a reference for the next time somebody asks me that question. So like I said, I do these videos every other Wednesday. 2 weeks from today, we're gonna do a developer focused stream. We're gonna hands-on work together and build some accessible tabs. So that's what we'll be doing next stream. If you're able to join me, I would love to see you again. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you next time, 2 weeks from today.